Hello everyone, good day to all of you. I hope you're all doing well. So I've been noticing a lot of comments both on my own channel, on other channels, and on a lot of internet gun forums as well, that specifically on the MR223 side, that there seems to be a lot of confusion where a lot of people think that the MR223 is just the European version of the MR556, whereas it's technically, in some, depending on how you're defining it, it can kind of be, because that is the one that's offered on that market. But as far as the rifle itself, there is a huge amount of differences, more so than just the name, that I did want to talk about here, because some of those part differences are different enough to where parts, aftermarket parts in particular, that might fit on an MR556 will absolutely not fit on an MR223. So how I'm going to talk about this is just in my usual fashion, starting from the very rear of the rifle and moving forward. So that means I'm going to start by talking about the buffer tube. That is something that is different between the MR223 and the MR556. So I'm going to be referencing this photo, and I'll keep pulling up photos of a MR556 as well, since mine has had a significant amount of aftermarket changes done to it, which will come in relevant later as well. But the MR223 just has a commercial spec tube compared to the MR556, which has always been manufactured with a mil spec tube. So of course, what that means for your aftermarket stocks is that whereas you could fit, because most aftermarket stocks are made for the mil spec tubes, you can fit pretty much anything onto an MR556. However, if you do have an MR223, you're going to need to make sure to either really seek out a commercial spec aftermarket stock or change out that entire buffer tube. As far as the buffer tube itself, of course, both do have the ball bearing rollers that is supposed to help tighten up the stock, and personally haven't found it ever to really do so, but that is there regardless. It's just the outer diameter is different, so do keep that in mind if you're thinking of changing out the stock. Allegedly, from what I've heard, the same model of slimline stock will work on both the commercial spec as well as a mil spec tube directly from HK. I don't have any commercial spec tubes to test with, so I'm not sure if they're actually identical. I'm not really sure how HK did that without having inserts or anything, but regardless, you should be fine with the slimline that comes with it, of course. Just be aware if you do want to try to change that. Moving up to the upper and lower. So the upper of the MR556, this is something I'm going to reference, although this is not an MR556 upper, this is a 416 upper. Regardless, follows the same profile. So on your MR223s, you have a full-length Picatinny. It also will be back here as well, extends all the way here, but also it's going to be spaced a little bit differently. So once you mount your handguard to it, just a continuous Picatinny rail all the way out. Furthermore, on the other side, you actually have a little, I like to call it a fence, or a little bit of a guard around your bolt catch. You have an extended, enlarged bolt catch on your lower, and you have full AMP features on the MR223, which is not something you have on the MR556. It just kind of follows your regular mil-spec pattern. And most of those AMP features, as I said, those are on the lower. One other point I did want to mention on the lower is the MR556 here, so I'll put it up here, I suppose. The magwell follows the older, original kind of 416 pattern where they had it more straight out. This did change on the MR223A3, where they're using more of just a regular AR-15 magwell. For some of the other small parts though, your piston bushing, of course, this is just threaded in. The A5 uppers, as well as the MR223A3, those are actually pinned in. Furthermore, since the MR223A3 follows the 416 A5 pattern mostly, you will actually have a rear leaf spring right here, which will help to put tension onto the lower and upper pins. That way it holds everything nice and rigid. Comparing that to the MR556, so this right here is not an actual MR556 lower. This is a semi-clone one that I was doing for a G95K inspired build. But what you do have on the MR556 instead of that spring is you have these locking pins, which do require a tool. You can see there's that little detent right there. You need to push it in to pop it out, which obviously you don't need to do on the newer A5, 416 A5 I should say, or MR223A3 spec upper receivers and lowers, of course. So if you have an MR223A3, one other very important difference is aftermarket barrels. You're going to need to make sure to get one that is the A5 spec, and you'll also need a different barrel nut. So this right here is the A1, A3 barrel nut. They look pretty much the same, and you can fit the A5 handguards onto both, but the barrel extension is different. If you look under here, you can see just right there, that little cutout. On the 416A5s, and again, the equivalent civilian version, which is the MR223A3, you have a much enlarged barrel extension pin, which just sits right in there. And I suppose I should mention, because I'm talking a lot about how the MR223A3 has a lot of those 416A5 features, that it is not an actual 416A5 upper, however, which is why I wanted to have this 416 upper here. So on an actual HK 416 upper, you're going to have this little shelf cut out that's for your full auto sear. And of course, the MR223 does not have that. You can just see right here, the MR556 doesn't have that either. So there's a lot of differences between the military variants that HK did to make these not convertible to full auto. Just that's one of many. There's a lot of differences with could go on for probably an entire another video, so I'll skip it for the time being. But just understand that you can pretty much not convert an MR223 or an MR556 to shoot full auto, even if you have the appropriate lower. Moving forward now to the barrel itself, and just so you can see one more time, there is that A1, A3 barrel extension pin. By comparison, of course, if you were to take off your MR223A3 barrel, it would be different. And when I'm saying A1, A3, I should clarify, I'm referring to the 416 numbering system, not to the MR223A3 in that regard. This will get a bit confusing because I am spitting out so many A1s, A3s, A5s, and all that, but I will try to keep that clear whenever I am discussing that. So, a lot of differences on the barrel itself. The MR556 barrel is pretty notorious for not having any chrome lining, which you can kind of see there in the lighting. It's just, there we go, focusing there, you can see it's just pure black. No chrome lining at all, no lining of any sort. Furthermore, the threads themselves, on the MR556, these are your regular AR-15 threads of 1/2 by 28. However, on the MR223, they follow the metric standards, which is the 15 by 1 millimeter. And the overall barrel profile, you can see, is quite a bit thinner now on the newest MR556A1s. That is something they did change. The older ones had a heavier barrel profile, which is more in line with what the MR223s still retain. Another difference also is that the MR556 is only offered in this 16.5-inch barrel length, whereas with the MR223 you do have the 11-inch, you have the 14.5, and the 16.5 as well. Furthermore, you also have two color variants. You have all black, pretty normal there, but then you also have a sand color or tan, which will end up looking kind of like this. But MR556, to go back to the main point, only offered in black, only offered in this barrel length. So that really does cover it for pretty much all of the major differences between the MR556 and the MR223. Of course, I didn't talk too much about the external differences because you can change most of those, even with some of the limitations of the different, for example, the commercial buffer tube and all that on the MR223. But to just talk about them, you know, the MR556 actually comes with an M-lock handguard, just like this here, just so you can see the length. Has the same sort of crossbolt as the MR223 handguards do, however, this is not captive. This will just come right out all the way, as you can see right there. And as for the stocks, I did already mention the MR223 does come with a slimline directly from HK. However, the MR556 comes with the old style crane E1 stock, the kind of fatter one. And the last kind of bigger difference is that the MR223A3 does come with the V2 grip compared to the MR556, which ships with Magpul grip. So thank you all for watching, especially if you got through the whole video. I hope this was very informative. Hopefully clears up a lot of things about some of the differences for at least somebody out there, because I've seen a lot of confusion on it. But if you have any more questions on this or on anything else, feel free to leave that in the comments below. I will try to respond to all questions. And if there's any other differences that you wanted to add as well, I mostly wanted to just talk about kind of the biggest differences between the two, then feel free to leave that in the comments below. Also, if you are interested, I wanted to focus mostly for this video on talking about the differences between the MR223 and the MR556, hence the title. But if you are interested in the differences more so in the 416 platform as a whole compared to the ARs, I did do a video on that as well, which will go a bit more in depth because I just want to talk about the differences here. But if you want to know kind of more similarities between these and ARs, then I would recommend checking that out as well. Might help out a bit to also kind of understand what aftermarket parts you can put on these. So thank you all, take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.